Now, what happens to metabolism is very interesting here. Your metabolism is all about how many cells are using up energy in a given period of time. Well, when you've gone too long without eating and you're having to dig into your savings or your short-term accounts, the muscle and the glycogen, the body then sends off alarms and says, hey, we're in an emergency situation here. We're having to utilize some of our muscles and glycogen. This isn't good. And so what the body will do to compensate is it will slow metabolism down. It says, shh, don't ask for so much energy. We simply don't have enough to provide. We want to burn as little muscle as possible. So the body says to the brain, hey, only the essential cells will get fueled. So breathing, the heart beating, things that are going to be required to life. Being nice to people is not something that you need to do in an emergency situation. So you're not as nice, you're not as patient, you're not as positive, because those things don't actually help you out in an emergency. So your body doesn't fuel those brain cells. So this is what explains why you're acting the way that you're acting or yelling at people, because those cells aren't receiving adequate fuel. Now, the other way that your metabolism slows down is because you're losing muscle mass. When you break down muscle, now you don't have those cells utilizing energy, so your metabolism slows down. Muscle is a big determinant of what your metabolism is. The more muscle you have, the faster your metabolism and the more that you can eat. Now, what the body will do to compensate in this situation is give feedback to the brain. It needs to let the brain understand what is actually happening within the system. So it produces chemicals that go back to the brain and tell it, hey, we've got to get food. We're in an emergency situation. We need glucose. So what you do is produce chemicals that then tell you to eat certain things. They're called cravings. Now, you've probably experienced these before. What's the number one thing that you crave when you go too long without eating? Sugar, carbohydrates, chocolate, dessert, donuts, candy, soda, anything that's going to be a quick source of glucose. So that is actually a chemical in your brain that's telling you to do that. Even the most disciplined person in the world with a great diet will succumb to the pressures of this chemical. You are not supposed to be able to override it. So the purpose of this chemical is to get you motivated to find glucose and put it into the system. And these sugars, these desserts, it's a fast way to get glucose to come into the body. The body does not care if it has vitamins or minerals, doesn't matter. I just want glucose. So you eat these foods, you get glucose. There's a second thing that you crave, fat. Now this one is much more subtle. You don't outwardly say, hey, I'd like to eat a bunch of fat. What ends up happening is that you create cravings around certain types of foods. So for example, if you go out to eat at a restaurant, you're much more likely to order some kind of appetizer or appetizer sampler platter where everything on their menu has been deep fried and it's got all kinds of fatty sauces that go with it. And you don't normally order that, but man, does it look good today. You're also much more likely to order a fatty meal, something with a cream sauce, maybe a steak with some bacon wrapped around it. You're also much more likely to order a fatty type of dessert. It just seems right to you. So why is your body telling you to eat fat? It's worth 9. It's worth 9 calories per gram or 9 units of energy. So it gets more bang for its buck. You eat some fat, you get double the energy than if you eat sugar or protein. That's why a lot of people crave donuts. It's fat and sugar all rolled into one convenient pastry. Now the last craving that you'll get is to pig out, stuff your face, eat it all, go to the buffet. Really make sure that you get all of the food possible into your system. So this is where you go to the restaurant and you eat the bread, then the appetizer, then your meal, and for sure you're getting dessert. This is where you get home and you raid the cupboards and you eat everything and still eat your dinner on top of that and then still look for food after you're done with dinner to really top things off. So what's your body doing with all of this food? Now you might feel like you need to eat all of this food or you might deserve to eat all of this food, but your body has a specific plan. First, it's going to fuel all of the brain and muscle cells that need energy. But the next thing it's going to do is prepare for any future times without food. It's going to build the biggest fat retirement account possible. It is the fat empire. So that the next time that you go too long without eating, the body feels safe and cushioned and ready to make it through that time without food. So it's important to understand that you're storing a lot of that food away as fat, even though it feels like the right amount to eat. Now, all of this happens simply because you went too long without eating. So how long does that take? Most people are surprised to learn that it only takes about 4 hours without eating before this process starts. 4 hours. How often do you go more than 4 hours without eating while you're awake? It's probably pretty common. So it is important to eat often, and what we recommend is that you eat around every 3 hours throughout the day, from the time that you wake up all the way until the time that you go to bed, to make sure that that glucose doesn't drop low, that you do have enough fuel coming into the system to fuel your brain and muscle cells, to make sure that you're able to keep the muscle that you have and possibly put on more muscle, that we don't invest into the fat retirement account because we probably don't need to do that, and that we keep our metabolism running as efficiently as possible, and that we don't send those chemicals to our brain that cause us to eat foods that perhaps we don't really need.